Here's what we're going to cover. 4 different things. We're going to cover the 5 key numbers that matter in your business financials, even if you don't have financials. We're also going to cover the key number that will stop you from moving from freelancer to agency, and that will stop your agency growing. You'll start burning out from being too busy and not being able to grow and not being able to afford help to stop you from burning out. Around about the 30K, 60K a month mark, and again, around about the 7-figure mark. So pay attention to that one. We're also going to talk about the big invisible cost that doesn't show up on your financials and how to improve it. So those of you who don't have financials, totally okay. We're also going to talk about rules of thumb so you don't go broke. Doesn't matter the size of your agency. This is applicable to everybody, and it turns out it's fairly simple. So let's start with the 5 key numbers in your financials, even if you don't have financials, and including that important one. So let's talk about Tommy. Tommy is one of my favorite case studies, but also one of my big lessons. So basically coached Tommy on the sales call, and he said, yes, this is very helpful. I'll just get the quick okay from my business partner, then we'll sign up. Turns out the business partner wasn't keen, but they implemented and they got the results. And later, Tommy asked me to help coach in a coaching program. Anyway, when I met him, they were doing 30K a month in revenue, which for some of you watching might be like, wow, that's amazing. I'd be rolling in money if it was 30K in revenue per month. But he and his business partner were only paying each other $1,000 a month each. They were working really hard. They were hustling hard. That wasn't the problem. They had a team delivering the work too. So it wasn't like they were buried up to their eyeballs in client work. So why were they only able to pay themselves $1,000 a month? Their prices were too low and their team costs were too high. And so the gap between their prices and how much they were paying their team, razor thin, and they weren't able to do anything about it. Right? They made very little money after paying their writers, so they couldn't afford managers to help deal with all the fires that come up when you've got a lot of clients and a lot of team members. They couldn't afford marketing to grow the business, so the revenue wasn't growing up very fast. They were so busy doing dealing with the fires in the business that they couldn't actually spend time growing it on sales calls, creating new offers, anything like that. They had no time for growth projects. There was no money for profits. They couldn't build up any savings, and of course they couldn't pay themselves very much. So how they fixed it is one of the things I'm going to teach you today. They had a content agency, and the solution wasn't actually AI, because AI wasn't that big of a deal back then, and they sold their business before AI became a big thing, actually. It was a combo of the raising prices and lowering their team costs, pay cuts for their team. And they also created a new recurring offer with their free time that they had. And the results for them is rapid pay growth. Their pay went from 1K a month to 15K a month each within a few months. Revenue was growing. They were able to afford managers to manage the business, and they sold the business for nearly life-changing money within 18 months of starting to implement this. So I'm not necessarily saying that my advice to you is raise your prices and cut your team costs. That was what Tommy needed. But the principle here is fixing your gross profit margin, the ratio between what you're charging and how much it costs your team to do the work, and how much of that revenue you keep after paying a team to do the work. I'll talk a bit more about gross profit margin in a little bit, but it's one of my main messages I want to share with you guys as soon as possible, because most people talk about growing the revenue. They don't talk about how much money you keep with profit. And even if they do, they don't talk about this gross profit margin, and it's the key. Every single rapidly growing large agency that I have ever seen that's profitable has a really good gross profit margin, and we'll talk about what that is later. But let's go through all 5 of the key numbers. Let's start with revenue, the obvious one in the word cloud here. The one that really jumps out at you is revenue, and like I said, it's something like we're all usually thinking about. So revenue is a key number, because without revenue there is no profits. There is no business. Obviously, we want revenue to grow up over time. That's pretty obvious. But we also want to be aware of when the seasons are in our business. When's the slow season? When's the busy season? So that we can make sure that during the busy season, we're stacking away some savings to get us through the slow season. So during the slow season, when the team's less busy, we can focus on training them and building more resources for the next busy season in your niche. It's also important to understand the different types of revenue that you have. Like, you might have one-off setup fees and then ongoing monthly fees. You might have one-off website jobs that you do and then ongoing monthly fees. You might do some consulting as well as the packages that you sell that we teach in Blueprint. And it's important to know if your revenue is going up because of the one-off projects that you don't want to do anymore, or whether it's going up because of the recurring income that you're trying to switch to. So having that visibility in your financials or in some way that you can see is important, not just looking at the dollars of revenue or the amount of money being deposited in your bank account. Making sense so far? So now let's talk a bit more about gross profit margin, the thing that really helped Tommy. So gross profit margin is about how much of the revenue you keep, but obviously we've got to talk about the revenue first. So this is something agencies really get stuck with. Freelancers get trapped as freelancers by this. It's the secret to Tommy's success and a lot of other agencies that I've worked with. Like I said, every rapidly growing, profitable agency has a great gross profit margin. Doesn't matter what niche, country, experience of the owner's personality, whether there's one owner or multiple owners, anything like that. The main thing that all rapidly growing profitable agencies have in common is a good gross profit margin. I'll probably do a bigger session on this in the future, maybe just for the community. Shameless plug for those of you in the Facebook group, come join the party. Might do a full session because this is something you all need to know. But for now, a couple of key points. Like I said, it's the big secret. And also you can't outsell a bad gross profit margin. If you're selling $1,000 a month package and you pay your team $999 to do the client work and communicate with the client, then every client you've only got $1 a month that you can use to pay for marketing, managers, your pay, profits, all the other expenses, everything. And every client's a headache. You know, there is some management that has to be done. There's also like you want to be able to spend money to acquire another client. So imagine if it cost you $500 to acquire that client and you're only really making $1 a month off them after paying the team to do the work. Then like you're going to go broke if you sell more clients. You're spending $500 to acquire the client. You're only getting really $1 a month out of that. Like it's a terrible idea. So you can't outsell a bad gross profit margin. If on the flip side, $1,000 a month package and you pay $1 a month to the team to do the work, okay, that's ridiculous. Let's say $100 to the team a month to do the work, and you've got $900 a month coming in from every single client that you can use to pay for marketing and for growth of the managers and pay your pay, other expenses and profit. If you've got 9 per client coming in, then every single new client you sign up, you could potentially sign up 1.5 more clients. 2.5 more clients if you want from each of those, and each new client makes you more and more profitable. So it's about that ratio. That's really, really important, because also if you like sell lots of clients, more clients means more headaches, especially if you don't have money to afford managers. So let's do some napkin math. Here's how to roughly calculate your margin. And yes, it's maths. We're gonna do some maths, but I promise this is pretty much it for the whole workshop. Now, I'm calling this napkin math because we're going to use quick numbers to make sure that we're in the right ballpark. It's like doing some quick notes on the back of a napkin. Let me walk you through an example of calculating margin. So the margin is whatever you're charging as the price, less the cost to deliver the work. Now it's the cost to deliver the work that's the complicated thing for people. So the costs that I'm talking about is the team or you is doing the client work and communicating with the client. Nothing else. There's a lot of other things people put into it, not important. So doing the client work, doing the client communication. If you're the one doing it, think of, include in the cost how much you would have to pay someone else to do it. And then if we want to convert it to a percentage, which is, like I said, the main thing, it's how much you keep of that price you charge, of that revenue. We go the margin divided by the price. Now, let me walk you through an example. We've got $100. It could be $100 a minute, could be $100 a day, 100 a week, 100 a month, whatever. 100's a nice round, easy number for the maths. So let's say you charge $100 and your cost to deliver is $33 a month. So that's the team doing the client work and the client communication. That's not your overheads like your bookkeeping fees or any of your marketing stuff or any of your credit card processing fees, any of your software or rented a co-working space, none of that stuff. No, it's just the team doing the client work, the client communication, and your time at a market rate. Like I said, how much would you have to pay someone else to do it? Doesn't matter whether you can't afford to pay anyone right now. Like, we need to make sure that this will work as you sign up more clients, because then eventually when you do get to the revenue level where you feel like you should be able to hire team members, like somewhere between 5 and 10K a month, probably, you should be able to start bringing in freelancers. We want to know that like your pricing is good and that you're ready to scale with those prices and those costs to deliver. So $100 price, $30 cost to deliver. So that means your margin, the bit you get to keep for all the rest of your expenses, is $66. and we can turn that into a percentage by dividing it by the price. So if you are spending 33% of your revenue on the team doing the client work and the client communication, gross profit margin is 66%, so 2/3 of the price you are keeping after paying for the client work and client communication. And that 66, coincidentally, is the minimum that you want to aim for. My golden rule is that it costs you less than 1/3 for your team to do the client work and client communication. There's another way to put it. If you can get that ratio right, you have so much money available to screw up in the other areas of your business. You can pay too much to acquire a client, or you could pay more than your competitors to acquire a client. And that's how you grow when they don't grow. One of the reasons. You actually got to provide a good service, obviously. The ultimate rule for those of you who, some of you guys who are up there in the revenue levels might already have this. You probably already have this unless you're working really hard and not paying yourself much. The ultimate is that we actually want it to cost you less than 20% of the price to pay the team to do the work. And there's lots of different ways to do that. Again, I'll go into it a bit more in a different workshop. But for now, the main thing I want you to be doing as a piece of homework, and those of you in the community, you'll have access to these recordings. The main thing I want you to focus on is, okay, let's see, if I've got $1,000 a month package, I need to pay my team about $200. Great. Fantastic. Go sell the crap out of that. But if you're going, okay, $1,000 package and it probably costs about $600 for the team to do the client work and the client communication, then that's something to work on, because it's just going to make you stressed. It means you won't have enough money to pay for marketing or pay for yourself, and it will eventually burn you out, or it will put a ceiling on how high your agency can grow. You need 66% margins at least to get into the 7-figure range, and you can't get very far in there while having a good lifestyle and being able to grow rapidly and all that kind of things. There do have a client that's a mid 7-figure agency, and their margin is only 55% instead of the minimum 66, but we're working on that and it's rapidly improving, and then they're now having more money to grow their business again. So if you've discovered that your gross profit margin isn't quite where it needs to be, or maybe it's okay, but you want to see if you can improve it a bit more, there are 3 ways to do that. Again, we can go into more detail in another session. The first option is a little trimming, like this guy here pruning his hedge tree thing. The key here is a little bit of trimming, because a tree needs leaves, otherwise it dies. So like, you can't just keep cutting costs and cutting costs and cutting costs. There's a limit to how much you can go there. But the costs I've got in mind are things like, usually it's your team's time delivering the client work, doing the client communication. So their time delivering the offer can be fixed with productivity, processes, and automation. So a little bit of AI helps, but also like getting specific about the best way that they should do the work that's the most efficient, and then making a process around that. And then productivity is about how well they spend their time. We'll talk a bit about that later. The less cost you have per client, the more money you'll make, and the faster and higher your agency will grow. The second option, like the buffet here, is to change the inclusions in your offer to things that are more profitable and remove things that aren't profitable. There's a lot of different options and a lot of different things that you could offer your clients. So choose ones that have a combination of getting clients results, they're easy to sell, and they're profitable to deliver. So for example, there's a lot of marketing agencies I work with, and I've suggested that maybe social media management isn't really worth their time, because clients aren't really willing to pay a huge amount of money for it, but it's very time consuming. Even in the age of AI, AI can create some content, but if you want it to stand out, you'll want someone to edit it, and then having to monitor the comments and try and stimulate engagement and all that kind of stuff. It's very time consuming. Clients don't want to pay for it. Very unprofitable for most of the marketing agencies, and also doesn't really make much of a difference to their clients' results. Doesn't really get them a huge amount of leads compared to things like SEO and PPC. Choosing what you offer can be one way to improve your gross profit margin. And then the other way, the way that people don't really like, business owners are a bit nervous about, is raising prices. For those of you who have kept the same prices from when you're a freelancer to when you're an agency paying other people, you need to raise your prices. That's an assumption that I can make. I did it a bit many years ago as well. It's like when I was a freelancer, it was get paid $25, $30 an hour when you're working for somebody else. And then, okay, I'll go out on my own and I'll charge $50 an hour. That's half the price of what my competitors charge, but $50 an hour, wow, that's double the pay for me. Life would be great. But usually $50 an hour doesn't leave you much money to pay someone else. That's why the person you were working for used to charge $100 an hour or $150 an hour. So when you switch to a freelancer, you can have your prices a little lower than your competitors and make a decent amount of money for yourself, but there's not enough room in there to pay other people. So raising the prices is definitely something that's necessary not long after the transition to being an agency. And like I said, it's something that most business owners are reluctant to do. So I want to spend a few moments trying to crack that fear for you, or at least putting a little dent in it.